Good morning. Welcome to 4Media and to our latest Friday Q&A live stream. I'm very excited this week because I've got a new webcam. So you can see me in glorious HD. But the bad news is that I'm also on Virgin Media. So who knows what might happen after this week's shenanigans. So I'm kind of assuming that by now, most of you watching will have tuned in at least once before. So I won't waffle on with too much introduction, but I'll give us more time for questions. So briefly, as you know, we're holding one of these every week, each time with a leading light from a section of the UK media. We've had journalists from national print and online, TV news magazines, lifestyle mag, and a digital entertainment site. A great cross section there. So a big thank you to those experts who've given us their time, but also to the hundreds of you who've supported us. Why are we doing this? Well, these have obviously been tough times for PR, and we are at 4Media are simply trying to do our bit to help us all get through it. To update you on our business here, we're still launching surveys as normal. Broadcast interviews are being run remotely, and live streaming is more important now than ever. So if you need our help or advice in any way, then please feel free to get in touch. Here at 4Media, we're definitely seeing things pick up a bit over the past few weeks. We've run hugely successful radio days. We've got several clients on telly. We've had some remarkable recent success in print and online. So there really are lots of positives out there. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Alan Edwards. I'm the head of news at 4Media. And until a couple of years ago, I was the night editor of the Sun newspaper, and with a very long time in Fleet Street under my belt. Between me and my team and Sam Dibley and his broadcast team, we've got pretty comprehensive insights into all sorts of media, and we're here to help them if we can. Anyway, for today's Q&A, we're returning to print and online, something lots of you have been asking about, but not many of us have been doing, and that's travel. And I'm particularly delighted to welcome an old friend and one of the country's best and most respected travel journalists, Lisa Minot from The Sun. Lisa's been travel editor of The Sun for an astonishing 20 years. She's won countless awards. Her readership is vast and her knowledge encyclopedic. And for somebody who's travelled much of the world, her own favourite holiday spot is much more down to earth, a beachside campsite in France that she's been to every summer since she was a child. I guess most of you know the drill by now. Lots of you have already sent in questions that I'll put to Lisa on your behalf. And there's a facility for you to send live questions as we go, which should appear down the side of your screen. I'll get through as many of those as I can in the 30 minutes that we have. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the doyen of travel journalists, The Sun's travel editor, Lisa Minot.
Hi there, Alan. Hello.
Morning, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
And from talking to us from your home office, looking good.
Yes, my brand
Uh,
new home office. I'm very pleased.
Excellent. So, first question, obviously, is how the heck are you filling your pages at the moment? There's no press trips, there's no launches, and everything that's breaking news in the travel industry is actually going to the front of the paper. It doesn't help you fill your pages at all.
No, I mean, it was tough to start with. The first few weeks were really tough because we just didn't know exactly what we could be doing when we were traveling. The first couple of weeks of lockdown or before lockdown, we were focusing on a lot of UK content, thinking, okay, we can't go anywhere else in the world. Let's just do UK. Then we went into lockdown. Of course, that all had to stop. Couldn't do any of that. So we basically then had to decide, right, well, people are still going to want to dream of traveling. They're still going to want to plan their travel in the years ahead. So we've started doing much more sort of aspirational stuff, a bit more bucket list. And as well as that, obviously, consumer issues. We're trying to cover the consumer issues that, as you say, are at the front of the book, but maybe a little bit more detail when we're doing consumer pieces at the back of the book. Other than that, I'm trying to sort of come up with more featurey type ideas as well. So I've commissioned some copy from freelancers. So we've had some commissioned pieces, things like lovely Jonathan Thompson has done me a piece on the baggage centre in Scottsboro in Alabama. Um, the one where all of the luggage goes. If you lose your luggage, it ends up there, and you can buy things from that luggage. So more featurey ideas, and then on top of that, what I also did was just put an appeal out to Sun journalists and said, look. any of your holidays you fancy telling me about? I'd love to see some copy. And actually, I was quite, I was amazed at the response I had. I've had probably about 30 or 40 pieces that I can now use that aren't connected to press strips, because I'm really trying not to use any copy that is from a hosted press strip, because I think it's quite unfair on the PR and the travel companies themselves if, they've paid out to send a journalist on those trips. And right now, because people can't actually book anything, I think it would be unfair to use them. So we're trying to use a combination of commissioned freelance copy and then the stuff that I've had come in, as I say, from some readers and some journalists themselves. And then we're doing roundups. So Jacob's done, my deputy this week has done a roundup on how to celebrate VE Day, either virtually or when the lockdown ends. And he's doing another one for next week, which is multi-generational holidays. So once we're all out of lockdown, we're going to want to maybe spend more time with our extended family. And here's some ideas for sort of multi-generational holidays that would suit the grandparents, parents, and the kids.
So that's quite interesting. The first thing, of course, will be the easing of the ending of lockdown. Will you then, do you think, be concentrating more on staycations, short breaks in this country? Will you kind of turn over the column to much of that?
I think there definitely will be a focus to start with on those sort of staycation ideas. I think for a lot of people, this is going to be the summer of the staycation. People have lost their jobs, people have had to take massive pay cuts. I don't think there's going to be that same appetite for people to head abroad, have they not already booked a holiday. And even the ones who have booked a holiday, I'd love to say that I think we will all be travelling again in July and August, but it's looking increasingly unlikely, I think.
That sort of leads us on, really. I mean, using your crystal ball, when do you think things will get back to normal, if there ever is a normal? When do you think people will start traveling abroad again?
I think we're looking at this idea of the new normal now, aren't we? And it is a crystal ball moment. It's going to depend on individual countries. So you look at Germany, where they actually had quite a success with the way that they've dealt with the coronavirus. They started to ease their lockdown, and then they saw this rise in the R test that we were taught. We heard about from Boris Johnson yesterday, and they've put more restrictions back in. So it's not as if you can see a way forward from countries that were a couple of weeks ahead of us in terms of where they started with their lockdowns. France only just begins to come out of their lockdown next week, and they went into lockdown a good, I think, 8 or 9 days before us. They were the 17th of March. We didn't. We went into lockdown on the 23rd of March. So it's not as if you're seeing from other countries around the world that things are, really beginning to open up anytime soon. Um, I'd love to say that I'll be in my, campsite in the south of France this July as normal, but if I'm honest, I'm not sure that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to be about other countries letting us in as well.
Yeah. So one of the big expansion areas of the travel industry, of course, for the last few years has been cruising. How do you think cruises will be affected by this? I mean, there'll be lots of people watching this who represent cruise firms and things.
It's a really tough one, cruises, because I think they were unfairly, given a really bad rap towards at the start of this. It was an unprecedented situation. It was a pandemic. I don't think it was handled well. The Diamond Princess, that just having them sitting there getting more and more and more cases was just awful. And it's only now that we're able to see that, everybody is now going to have to look at different ways of hygiene and social distancing practices. I'm really hoping that once more we can actually get the cruise industry back up and running. I love cruising. It's one of those things I've enjoyed doing as a travel journalist. Um, I've never had an issue with any ship that I've ever been on. And I do think the one thing that you do get is you get that core group of people who, for them it's a lifestyle choice and they will still want to carry on cruising. I think where we might have a challenge is in the new to cruise. We've had huge expansion in the market over the last 10 years. There's a lot of ships out there, a lot of capacity, and I can see that a lot of these cruise lines are going to now start, we've already seen it, they're starting to sort of to I'm not sure what the word is for putting a ship into dry dock or something like that. Some of their older ships, because they're not going to have that same demand. Um, I think the Americans very much will probably shore up their own American cruise lines because they will be cruising maybe around us around America itself. So that might actually be quite positive for them. And I've seen the same with some of the British cruise lines doing the same. Tours of the British Isles. So sailing around the country. We do at least have a ton of coastline to sail around. I'm really hoping it will get better, but I think it is going to, for the new to cruise, it's going to be a real challenge. It's going to take them a while to forget what they've seen in the last couple of weeks and months with cruises, being sort of stranded and unable to dock in ports.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you know, I mean, I'm a big cruise fan myself,
Mm.
and I think it will be quite difficult to get people to go back on cruise ships because it seems like a hotbed of spreading infection, as you know from norovirus. If ever there's an outbreak of stomach upsets on a ship, it tends to spread like wildfire. So I think people would be very wary of that. But broadening it out a little bit now, what can travel PRs do to help you or to get your interest during this time, which is we're all having to think out of the box, aren't we? What can travel
Mm.
PRs do to help you and to help themselves really?
I think looking forward, so anything that that's coming up in say 2021, new hotel developments, theme park developments, anything like that. So stuff looking forward, where you might possibly not have thought about actually. Well, it's not happening until next year. We're not going to start talking about it yet. I think now is the time to start actually talking about those kind of things. We've also introduced some new columns in the paper. Everything went in waves in this sort of pandemic. So we had the sort of staycation wave, and then it was everyone was sending me virtual stuff, and that's now beginning to sort of dial down a bit. But that virtual idea, the idea of a virtual vacation, that's really the only emails that are coming into my inbox at the moment. That and Zoom backgrounds. So they're the only two things coming in. We have got a Sofa Escapes column, which tries to sort of take one destination and then tie in all of those different sort of virtual travel angles. So it's how to virtually visit the destination via books, film, whatever. So we're running that every weekend on a Sunday. And on a Saturday, we've got a new column called Take Three, which is take three exactly that. So take three tree houses, take three island escapes. And we're doing it in budget, bargain, and blowout. So three different price points, really, just to fill up those columns that our pages have a particular style, and without the sort of news coming in from PRs at the moment, it does mean that we're having to get a bit more creative and do those columns. So those two columns, which is the Sofa Escapes and um, Take Three. We've also got a column for some readers to actually send in their own pictures, wish we were here. And I've been astonished at the number of some readers who've actually sent me in pictures of themselves and say where they want to be. There's definitely a real pent up demand there. People are sending me, they're not getting anything for this. This is just, for the chance for me to put their picture in the paper. There's no prize or anything. And yet we're still getting loads of entries. So I've been really impressed with that. And it does tell you that, people are desperate to get away again.
That's quite interesting, actually. People sending in their wish you were here pictures. I mean, what if
Yeah.
there's an opportunity there for companies to get on board with that and maybe offer some kind of prizes for those sort of thing? I mean, is that the sort of thing you'd be interested in?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as I said, we've had we've had a great response without any kind of prizes or anything like that. But there is sponsorship opportunities, of course. Yeah, I mean, we could look at doing something, or vouchers for holidays in the future, something like that. If you send your pictures in, um, so yeah, that's definitely something I would be interested in doing.
Right.
Yeah,
As I said, we're getting live questions come through as we're talking. So
yeah.
I've got one here from Jasmine Rushton from the Hong Kong Tourism Board. She says there's a lot of talk about how travel will change in the future post COVID. How do you think a Sun reader's attitude will change? Good question.
Um, it's a really great question. I think, listen, for a lot of our readers, this is going to have been a really tough few months. A lot of them would have lost their jobs. A lot of them would have been forced to take pay cuts. I think that value, which was always something that some readers really, were looking for in their holidays, is going to be ever more important. And making sure that they every single penny of their holiday pound is being spent correctly. Um, they have a huge love for travel, um, and a love for long haul travel as well. So, I mean, I definitely know that, they are going to want to be going back out there again. I think, though, it is going to be restricted somewhat by the amount of how much holidays are going to cost in future. If we're talking about social distancing on planes, that's only ever going to lead to higher prices, and also higher prices because, unfortunately, I think there are going to be some airlines that don't survive this. Less competition is going to mean there's going to be, less demand, less competition. The prices are going to be higher.
Thank you. Right, another question now from Tom Farthing of Cove Banking. He says, knows it's a tricky subject, but is there any scope, or do you have any advice for companies who want to target travel readers with products or advice?
Um, sorry, I'm not quite understanding the question. Is there any? Say that.
I,
Sorry,
I, I
cut out
think
there.
I think Tom's trying to say that, if people want to get a target, PRs want to actually get to readers who would be interested in travel. Any tips on things they could do during this to get involved in that conversation? What sort of things should they
Any kind of
potentially do?
trends? I think anything trends wise is really good. So telling me, that a particular company has seen a trend upwards or downwards in terms of interest for particular destinations, or in terms of bank, is there currencies that they're looking at? The post office, who actually have been really quiet recently, but they did a sort of travel report with, how whether people were buying particular types of currencies, and whether that indicated they were going to particular areas. So in terms of bank, maybe, are they seeing people looking to get money changed into different currencies? Which currencies are going up, which currencies are going down, which might give us an idea of trends as to where people are looking to go away.
Right, and talking about trends, we've got another question from Pandora Georgia, Bullet PR. Are there any trends that you think will emerge when we start to emerge from all this?
I think the staycation trend, which we've already talked about, and I think to start with, it's going to be about people probably holidaying a little bit closer to home. I think two things are going to do that. I think just sort of the cost of actually going further afield, and also the complication in that, we still haven't worked out. We've seen, Australia saying that possibly they might not be letting anybody into the country until next year. So it might just be that we'll be going to wherever we can closer to home. Greece seems to be the one country that really does seem to want to, welcome people as quickly as possible and as soon as possible. They've managed to, escape relatively unscathed from the crisis. So there is definitely, demand there. You can see that they really do want us there, and I think some readers particularly will still be wanting to make the most of going on their holidays. If you're looking at the stories that we're doing online, and obviously with online stories you get that instant hit of an idea as to how, which of the stories that the readers are looking at. Anything that's forward looking, anything that's when can I go back to, when am I going to be able to go on holiday, where are the countries that don't have coronavirus, those are the stories getting the biggest hits at the moment.
So another one as well, on a similar vein, really, from Holly. Do you think stays at apart hotels are likely to rise, seeing that all the amenities are contained? You can actually stay in like a hotel room and but cater for yourself and not mix with too many other people.
I think that's definitely going to be on people's agendas. I mean, I like, listen, my caravan in the south of France is my caravan. Nobody else has been in it. I can clean it. I can put it back into its little, into its home in the south of France, its gardiennage. I think that will be something, and we're already seeing hotels saying that, they're looking at doing, it's going to be the end of the big buffet. All-inclusive buffets are not going to be around for the foreseeable future as all of these new sort of hygiene and standards come in. That's the one thing I have seen this week actually is everybody. The big hotel groups, the likes of Hilton and Accor, um, coming up with their own standards now for how they're going to look at, changing the way that they do rooms, and that's something that I'd be keen to hear from everybody. Hilton now saying that, room service, and even just cleaning of rooms will only happen if the person who's in that room wants that to happen. It won't be a sort of standard thing, and that you can have privacy in your room, in that you can have your room not be entered by anybody at all while you're staying there. And there's going to be a lot more of that. I think, the idea of service in hotels is going to really quite dramatically change, I think.
Indeed. I've got questions coming in thick and fast here. Rebecca Warden Brown of Instinctive Partners says, do you think government needs to do more to support the travel industry?
Oh, 100%. I mean, listen, I've been doing things like this and radio and TV interviews for the last 2 months. And the one thing that has baffled me is how, the travel industry is unique. It's not unique, I know, but it's uniquely going to be affected not just now in the short term during lockdown, but long term as well. And there's been very little support and help from the government other than what's happened under the sort of the furlough schemes and stuff like that. And unfortunately, what's happened is that that's then led travel companies to sort of really create their own way of dealing with the crisis. And that has led to a lot of consumer anger because, the consumers are the ones who are having to pay for this, I'm afraid.
And what about the travel firms themselves? Of course, consumers are wanting refunds instead of vouchers. What should airlines and travel companies be doing, do you think?
Well, listen, I have every sympathy. The way that the market works is that the money that people pay in deposits and stuff like that keeps travel companies going through the sort of the leaner months and years, and they tend to sort of already use the money that you've been given before they've actually sent you on your holiday. It's just the way the model works, and that is probably going to have to change. What you've seen, just the scale of it as well. Do have sympathy for the fact that you've got the likes of TUI. I think they've had, so far up till now, they've had to cancel the holidays for 900,000 people. But at the same time, um, if they want to actually access this government support in terms of the furlough money, they can't have anyone working for them. So how are you meant to actually process all of those refunds when you can't? If you want the staff there to do it, you're going to have to actually pay them yourself. So I do have sympathy for them. It's just unfortunate that for the consumer, they're looking at it just very much from their own perspective. I can't travel. I haven't got much money at the moment. I've just lost my job, or I've just taken a pay cut. I want my money back, and they're not getting it back quickly enough. And that it is unfortunately doing the whole industry a disservice in terms of because there's been this delay in getting people's money back to them. I think there is going to be a trust issue as well. People are very angry, and they don't trust the industry as much as they used to.
Just one from me here. Who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? I mean, there's obviously going to be some repercussions in the future, depending on how people feel they've been treated by travel firms and airlines.
It's a difficult one. It'd be very easy to say that the good guys are the small companies and the bad guys are the large companies, which generally you could say. But that's because the small companies, they're not having to hand back as much money. They're not having to go to as many different suppliers to get the money back. Um, I would say that the likes of Wizz Air, which really are putting a bit of a fast one this week by restarting their services from Luton. We're still in lockdown. The government advice is that as against all but essential travel anywhere in the world indefinitely. And the cynic in me thinks that those flights are put back on because it's another way of making it more difficult for people to try to get their money back, because they can say, well, the flight went, you chose not to travel on it, even though we are not allowed to travel because it's in lockdown. It's just creating another barrier, making another reason for people to have to jump through yet another hoop to get their money back.
A specific question here from Frankie Wheeler. Do you think brands like Virgin will be damaged because of the bad press that Branson's had, for instance, in this?
Yeah, unfortunately, it has had a pretty appalling, hit to its reputation over the last couple of months. Um, I think somewhat slightly unfairly, but I think if you look at it from the consumer's perspective, if they're, unfortunately with Virgin, because they basically did the sort of big ticket trips, the big blowout things, the Disney Worlds and the long haul trips. So they cost a lot more money, and they are going to, engender that much more passion when people don't then get those trips and are having trouble getting their money back. Um, the airline, is struggling, and we're seeing other airlines in other parts of Europe getting state aid. Our government doesn't seem to be, stepping up to doing that just yet. Um, it's a real difficult one because if we, I really have a soft spot for Virgin. They did innovate, and they forced sort of legacy airlines like British Airways, American Airlines, like American Airlines. They they were forced to sort of, sit up, take notice, and do better things for the consumer because of what Virgin did, because of the way that they actually made traveling with them so much sexier and so much more exciting. So it has taken a massive hit. It is going to have an issue, but perhaps slightly undeservedly.
Indeed. So, got another question here from Victoria Morton of Journey Further. Do you think once that it's safe to travel, you will want to write about destinations where people can go to kind of help out the local economy, to help rebuild the economy, kind of sort of altruistic tourism?
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely would be something we're looking at. I mean, sustainable travel was already something that was beginning to be quite high on the agendas, even for some readers who might actually only take one main holiday a year, but they were still looking at that sustainability angle. And I think anything where you're looking at now trying to help support local communities, it's definitely the kind of thing I would definitely want to be writing about.
Talking about the Sun travel pages, I know you do two main sections a week in the Saturday and
Yeah.
the Sunday papers. Sometimes a dozen pages of a weekend. Um, but what is it? The kind of trips that you like to talk about when things are back to normal, whatever normal is. You don't just concentrate on the affordable, do you?
No, I mean very much. It has to be, a range of all different types of holidays. You don't just write about Ford Escorts on the motors pages. Some readers like to see something that is aspirational, is something that they can, perhaps dream about. Those bucket list occasions and instances. And some readers actually travel far further afield than than I give them credit for a lot of the time. The USA has been voted the Some Readers' favourite destination 2 years running in our travel awards, and that's beating the likes of Spain and France, or Greece. We do like traveling. We do like traveling further afield than I sometimes think they do. Um, but I think from now on we're going to be looking at, as I said, maybe I think it's going to be traveling slightly closer to home. And I think protection is going to be a really big thing. People will have learnt the hard way over the last few weeks and months that if they've done dynamic packaging, um, they've lost their money. Saying that, it's not as if having an atoll protected package holiday has helped people get their money back much quicker. But it does still have that level of government protection. So I think the idea of being able to say, look, you want to be able to travel safely, um, is going to be important as well.
So still got some questions coming in. One here, which I love from Zoe Tang of Red Consultancy. Are you interested in cabin crew pilot stories on what they're doing in lockdown?
Uh, yes, I mean we're getting stuff from the likes of BA, Virgin, telling us about the rescue flights they're doing and flights with the sort of cargo with the PPE equipment on board. Yeah, anything with pictures as well. And that's the one thing that we really struggle with sometimes is just quirky, different picture stories are the kind of thing that we're really interested in looking at.
Lovely. And one from Sarah Cole. Is there any scope at the moment for pitching product placement ideas? Products that would be good for travel, either UK or further afield?
Definitely. We're still running our essential column. So we have a travel essential column every Sunday in the Sun travel pages. It's a sort of tried and tested idea. So yes, definitely still interested in anything that you can give us. Um, Obviously, we're slightly bending it that more towards sort of more staycation-y style, product at the moment because I think the first thing that we will be doing, once lockdown ends, is that we will be travelling in the UK. So it will probably, be UK first and then further afield. But yeah, we're definitely doing product stuff.
And a question here from Fevan, I can't really pronounce that, but do you want to hear about UK hotel brands that are helping with the current situation, i.e., from like donations to NHS workers and stuff like that?
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that's coming into my inbox. The problem is they're all starting to get pretty similar, those stories. So you either have companies donating rooms to NHS workers, or you're having companies donating money to NHS charities. And the stories are pretty similar. So once you start getting lots through like that, it becomes something that's not perhaps as much of a news story for me.
Right, I'm conscious that we're coming close to the end of our time. So a couple of quick fire ones now, because they really are coming in thick and fast. From Sarah Cole, would you be interested in what's happening with Eurotunnel currently?
Yes, yes. Yeah, the Eurotunnel really don't seem to be great on their PR front in terms of communicating with us. I actually have no idea what they're doing in the current situation. I'm sure they are still running trains because it's obviously all the cargo's going back and forth. But no, I'd definitely be interested to hear from them.
And another one here from Holly L. Are you expecting a rise in UK sporting holidays like golfing breaks, mountain biking? And would you be interested in blogs from properties discussing what they're planning?
Uh, Blogs, information, yes. I mean, I think we will emerge from lockdown wanting, and there will be definitely a trend towards, right, okay, we've been stuck at home for the last 6, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. We need to get out there and exercise. We need to get out there and actually start to sort of, healthy ourselves up again. So definitely be interested in doing something on that. Yeah.
And quickly, what about video? Are you interested in video at all for online?
Yes, definitely interested in video for online. I mean, I'm sort of recording myself at the moment. We're putting videos up of us commenting on various different stories, but always interested in video for online. Yeah. We did a story this weekend
And
in the paper. So just as an example, we did a story this weekend in the paper, which was 10 extraordinary flights. The sort of the longest, longest distance flight, all different types of flights, and we had 3 different videos that went with that story. So that when the story went up online, there was video as well as just the sort of the main images and the copy as well.
and finally, what's the best way for PRs to get in touch with you? What's the best way that people watching this can pique your interest?
Email, please. It's lisa.minot at the-sun.co.uk. And literally stick in the subject line exactly what it is that you're pitching, so it's quite clear in the subject line, because obviously I don't get as many emails as I used to. God, I remember the times where I used to complain about getting too many emails. Well, I'm sort of wishing for those times again now. Please keep sending me emails.
And presumably, if somebody's got any story ideas or some content to offer you, you'd be happy to look at all that kind of things.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Every email that comes into my inbox is read. When I had 5,000 a day, it was, and a week, I was reading every email, and I'm still reading every email now.
Right. Okay. Well, look, Lisa, thank you so much for taking time out. I know how busy you are, and thank you so much for coming and answering all the questions. There's loads of questions I couldn't get round to because so many people have wanted to ask you so much. So we appreciate it so much. I found it fascinating. I'm sure everybody watching has too, and I bet your inbox is going to be filling up this afternoon. And thank you to everyone else for tuning in and sending in questions. We really hope you found it useful. And remember, feel free to catch up with any of the team at 4Media if you think we can help you with anything. So next Friday is VE Day Bank Holiday. So for a nice change, we'll all be at home. We won't be here, and we hope to see you for the next 4Media Q&A in a fortnight's time on, I think, the 15th of May, Friday, May the 15th. So in the meantime, as ever, look after yourself and stay well. Bye-bye.